Hi friend. This is a little different today, a self-massage sequence for the lower body. I've been inspired by this sequence from scouring YouTube to try and find a self-massage video to send to a client, and just been underwhelmed by what's out there already. So I'm in a kind of a short time frame today for a recording window, so I'll just kind of start recording and we'll see what we get through. But either way, where we do a lot or we do a little, the power of self-massage is that you're in the driver's seat, and that's something that I really like. You're feeling what you're doing as you do it, and so you are getting in the moment feedback to adjust. One thing that I think is an important disclaimer is that you never push into anything that feels too sore, too tender, or that it's going to stir you up, irritate you. This is about things feeling good. And sometimes it is good pain, and that's fine. But I do need to trust that you'll regulate that, so nothing should feel damaging. And that being said, when we do this work, often I'm talking about like releasing and letting go, and that's all well and good. But what is important to remember is that a lot of the stuff that we're doing, here with the touch, is non-specific, and it's all about sensory input. So even though it might feel like a tissue has released or it's changed, what's more inspiring and empowering is that likely it's your system that's changed, the way that the messages are communicating, the way that the perception is being experienced. So we're not necessarily changing the stuff, but we're changing the stuff. So we're going to begin in a pretty kind of traditional way, as I often do this with self-massage, is just like a notice the difference. So we'll start with a forward fold, then we're going to do some massage out along the soles of the feet, and then we're going to do the forward fold again and just see how it feels different. So you'll use either a massage ball or just something that you can push your foot into, sometimes like the perfect stone that you found on the beach that has just the right amount of arch can be useful, or weights where you've got like a small weight that has the bar in the middle and the knobs on the side, anything like that that you can just push into. But generally speaking, we'll be using a massage ball. Okay, so I've got one ball ready for my feet, and all I'll do is just fold forwards. Now I'm pretty flexible these days, so I can part on the floor, but you might just notice where you are, and it's fine to be dangling in space. Do pay attention to where you feel the pull, the limitation, or the tug is coming from. Slowly coming up, and then all you're going to do is just kind of get into it with one foot. So a little bit of balance is required here. If you find it useful, you might use a wall instead. I don't actually know if I'm in shot standing, but I'll talk you through it anyway, and you can have a little explore. So the thing about the foot is that you kind of want to get everywhere with it. So you might start taking your heel to the ball and just getting to know what it's like to push into the more bony part of the foot. And then slowly over time, you will transfer the weight so that the ball runs down along and forward, all the way down to the pinky toe. And can you even stretch out the pinky toe on the foot, on the ball? And just go back and forth a few times. As you run the ball or the piece of equipment along the foot, do you get a sense of the side that, say, about halfway down the foot from heel to toe, there's a bit of a protuberance of a bone? This is the base of the metatarsal on this side, And I've heard it described, and I love the idea of it being a peninsula. So there's sort of a projection, a jutting out of one of the little toe bones. So you might benefit from getting really onto the blade side of the foot and rolling back and forth. Nice. And then over time, you can do this for as long as you want, but I'll kind of move through the sequence relatively quickly. Plug the heel down into the floor and start to explore the rolling from pinky toe to big toe. So this is kind of like a windshield wiper movement, a wave. Back and forth. And you're welcome to kind of spread and lift or engage and push down with the toes. And then we'll just connect the dots, the space between the base of the big toe and back to the heel. So this is the kind of traditional arch. This is the arch that we often think that we need a lift in or support or to strengthen. And you can really kind of get into it here. There's a lot of sensory stuff that's going on. So just take your time. And either back and forth, or maybe you find some little circular movements. Step back off the ball and fold forwards again, and just notice what you notice. Nice. For the sake of time, I'm just going to carry on. I invite you to pause here if you want and do that same little thing, rolling on the other side. But now all we'll do is move through the calf, so do a bit of calf work. I'll direct it by moving to the other side of the body. So I massage my left foot, so I'm going to do my right calf. So if you're not pausing the videos and just following along, we're just going to go from one side to the other. Calf, the stuff at the back. You can play here with bending and pointing and flexing the toes, pointing and extending the toes, and also bending and straightening through the knee. So they're the main things. Otherwise, you'll use your ball or your prop, sitting down on the floor, and just lift your leg up that you're using and place it on the thing. And this is a good way to start. It shouldn't be too strong. Just straight or bend knee. And doing that same thing, trying to go sort of from one end to the other. We won't go too deep or too long, sorry, but there's just that sense of being able to roll. So there's a lot of flesh here through the back of the calf. So you might find kind of sweet points where you're like, oh, that feels good. And you can change by rotating the leg out and in. And any point that you just kind of want to sit on, especially if you feel that kind of radiating feeling, it's like you touch somewhere and your eyebrows go up and it like echoes through the tissue around. So feel free to stay there. Everything is welcome in the self-massage world, really, as long as it's feeling good, useful. So just do trust that what your body is asking for is good. So here I'm just sort of exploring the outside of the calf a bit more by bending into the knee and turning the inner thigh up. And then as we just maybe start to inch our way closer towards the back of the knee, there's a sense of being curious or cautious here. There's a good chunk of blood vessels and nerves at the back of the knee. Not a problem to go there, but we do just want to pay attention as we move away from just the muscle and connective tissue stuff to some of this more vascular or neural sensations. But I do love a good compression through the back of the knee. So ball, or if you don't have a ball, you can always just use your fist. What you'll do from here is pop something in the back of the calf, in that kind of back of the knee joint. And then just really gently, because it can come on quite strong. I've got rolled up pants too, so that's going to be another kind of thing that I'm pushing into. But just start to squeeze or draw the heel in towards the body. So it's like you're closing down the space behind the back of the knee, and there's a gentle compression here. For me, it feels like the thigh is the floor, so to speak, and the pressure is in the back of the calf. So it's like the force is going in towards the calf muscles rather than back towards the thigh muscles. I know it's kind of arbitrary, but it's sort of that sense of where you're directing. So there's integrity through the thigh. Nice. And then last little thing that we can do for the calf is what I call a pin stretch. So what you're kind of going to do is use your hands to pin, to gobble up the tissue of the calf, and then you're going to use your foot to stretch. So how we're going to do this is by pointing the toe away so that the calf stuff is soft. You're sort of going to gobble up the tension, find a place to pin. I've got my fingers on the belly of the calf, and hands are going to anchor to the outside. So it really feels like you're kind of pushing specifically, but also squeezing and pinning. And then draw the toes towards the face. So there's like a lengthening feeling down the back of the leg. And then you're just going to keep refining it. This might be your first time doing this work. But what I'm looking for is that at the end of the range, where the toes are extending back towards the face, you really feel like a pull or a sense of tension underneath the hands. So you soften by pointing, find somewhere that you want to pin, and then you stretch away. I'm showing you with my leg lifted, but you can always just have your foot on the floor. There's just a bit more movement that ripples through the body. Pin and stretch. Pin the tissue, lengthen the joint. Or lengthen the muscles of the joint. This will be slightly different if you do it with a bent knee versus a straight knee. Just to target two of the big muscles of the calf. Definitely make a few sounds while I do this. Cool. And then final thing to kind of think about in this, not the final thing, but final thing that we'll think about in this sequence, I'll do it on the other side, is just about the fibula. So fibula, you've got two main bones that are running in the calf, the tibia, which we feel as our shin bone, and then the fibula on the outside. And we can get a sense of where our fibula is by feeling or rubbing down our ankle and seeing this protuberance, this other thing sticking out on the lateral side, which is our lateral malleolus. So as you run up the outside of the leg, you might get that sense again that there's a similar protuberance up on the top of the outside of the leg, just below the knee. So we call this the head of the fib, and the bone lives in between these two. And all you're going to do is just take a really soft palm, pushing at the back, and just start to gently push into the back of this bone. It sort of feels a little bit like you're moving the bone forwards. Now that's a really over-exaggerated description of how it actually feels, but just that sense of pushing from the back side into the bone. And then you're welcome to go the other way too, so you get that soft, thenar, eminence, wrist part of your hand. You'll find those points again, and you're just going to push into the tissue backwards. Now this works really well. It's one of those ones that's like slightly easier for someone else to do because you'd kind of be lunging forwards and back at the time to help move the bone. But anyway, just that sense of feeling where the fibula is can be enough of a nice release for some. Cool. Okay, big toe stretch. We're going to do this with both feet at the same time. So I'll turn around at the beginning just so you get a sense of what's happening. So all you'll do is go onto the balls of the feet with the knees lifted, and then begin to take the knees down so you've got hips to heels. My pinky toes never like to be part of the stretch, but I always just invite them to join the party anyway. And then you're just sitting back for a few moments, sort of as long as you can tolerate. But maybe you push down with the toes. Just continue on like that for a few more moments if you can. And then as you come on out, we're just going to sit on the floor. You're wanting to sit comfortably, cross-legged ideally, and be in a position where you can sort of invite one leg up to engage with at a time. You might sit on a block instead, or maybe take a block and prop it underneath you. And we'll just pay a little more attention to the toes. So when we were with the massaging with the ball, we were rubbing up and down more of the foot, and now this is about the toes. So you'll invite one leg to sit on top of the other, and just first work through all 5 toes. Maybe you just squeeze, check where they are. I tend to give them a little bit of a traction and a pull, but it shouldn't feel like you're sort of pulling the whole limb away. It's just sometimes that little sense of space that you can give. Sometimes it ends up with a click. And then you're going to move through in what I call twiggle all 5 toes. So it's like a twisting wiggle-like sensation. What happens here is as the toe sort of attaches to the foot, there's a little egg cup kind of shaped joint. So that we've got a bone kind of cuddled in another little socket bone, and they'll just sort of move around. So you're holding the top of the toe to get a kind of feeling about carving out the joint. So holding the big toe, and then I'm just twisting back and forth. So wiggle, a twist, a twiggle. And it's kind of the way that the toes don't move like this if you're looking at them and trying to get them to move. So this is more of a, it's kind of taking it on the excursion that it doesn't usually go. And you'll just work your way through all 5 toes, or however many toes you have. Again, maybe this idea of traction, like a little pull, give the joint a bit of space, and then twiggle. This toe work for me becomes a little more important as I get in towards the cooler months and my toes feel very far away from my heart for circulation. I'm prone to a little bit of chilblain feelings, so it's just the sense of nourishment or moving, blood flow, warmth, that kind of thing that you're looking for. I've switched sides, you might too. And just twiggle through the other toes. So again, it's like a little pull and then a twist. Nothing should feel sore here. Maybe there's a sticky point in particular for you based on your history, but really it tends to feel like there's a lot of movement here. It's just not necessarily the movement that you can control your toes doing. Nice. Okay, So we're going to come back to the massage balls. We're going to move all the way up to the kind of lower back pelvis space, and we'll just have a good wee play around here for a while. So you're going to end up kind of lying on your side and back and forth and swishing around. This time you'll use 2 balls, ideally 2 of the same balls, and you're going to lie on down. Bent knees, feet on the floor. We will use a bridge position, a vague bridge position to do most of this. So you'll push into the feet enough. Oh, it's so relaxing that you can push up or lift the pelvis off, and you're just going to find the 2 balls somewhere in the space between the lower back and the bum glutes. So it's not high in the lower back, though we will get there, and it's not low down in the bum, but it's kind of around what we anatomically call the PSIS. This is the sacroiliac joints. And you're just going to start from here, feeling around. So it's a little more bony rather than fleshy. If we would go further down, we get into the flesh. And if we go further up, we're in the lower back, and we're somewhere in between those 2 points. For me today, I'm happy just like resting here. There's sort of a nice sweeping band of sensation, but you might instantly feel that you want to move around a little. And the moving with the balls will naturally probably be a side to side sway. So you shift the weight of the body one side as you move the balls underneath the body. And in doing so, the side-to-side swish, I notice how the balls are naturally traveling down. So it's the direction of the heels, and they're moving more in towards the fleshy part. So because I've got 2 balls, what's happening is as I sway to one side, one ball moves quite close towards the center, so it's kind of sitting around on my sacrum, just above the coccyx, while the other ball moves out more laterally, out towards the hip of the same side. So you're getting this sense of really exploring center to lateral, medial to lateral, spine to hip. And it's okay at any point to just kind of change where you've placed the ball. But I'm now down in what I would call way more like gluteal tissue, lateral rotator tissue, and nearly down to hamstrings. So all the way down past my butt nearly. And once the balls are low down, take them out for a moment and just bring yourself up to sit. And as you're sort of here with the balls, they're not quite in the right place, you might have them totally out, but can you just notice what you're sitting on? This is your sit bones or the ischial tuberosities, and these are the anchor points for the hamstring. So you'll use your kind of bridging lifted position, either go 1 balls or 2. 1 ball's a bit easier, 2 balls, I can do it at this point. And you're just going to try and really sit the balls on the sit bones. So you're sitting on either 1 ball or 2 balls. It's hilarious how many times I say ball. And then just explore what that's like too. So I've gone 1 leg long, 1 leg bent, but you can really just move around. And you're just refining the placement. Again, it's something that just trust what you're feeling feels good. And And then from here we'll get a bit more into one hip. So sitting on the floor, one ball only, you have a hip joint. And a lot of the hip joint is deep, but maybe you can feel the beginning of your hip just sort of maybe 2 fists down from the top of the ilium, the iliac crest. Something like that will get you in the vague area of the hip joint. Similar to the other landmarks that I'm pointing out, it's like a protuberance, so it's something that's like sticking out of the tissue a bit more, the thigh bone. And we're able to go to the front, above, underneath, and behind the bone. So that's what we're going to work on. So it's a bit more in a side lying position. I'll be lying down so you won't quite see exactly where I'm at, but you're going to find that bony part of the hip. If you're not sure, move around a little and just get that sense. And then pop the ball down just behind the hip and start to stack or roll or move your knees over. Ugh, so sore. And so I'm now in a bit more of a side lying position, right on top. So if that's too much weight, no problem. You can always just lie on your back a bit more and use that top leg as an anchor. But you're letting the knee fall out and rest on the floor, and then just doing that same kind of rolling space. If you can keep feeling or sensing where that protuberance of the hip bone is, then can you notice when you're rolling on the bone? No problem with that, just FYI. The bones like to be stimulated too, but it's definitely, it can feel more acute or strong compared to having the ball over the tissue. So you're kind of connecting what we were doing before on our backs, that place where the ball rolls around to the back of the hip. And then make sure you get on top of the hip. So above that bony protuberance, this is where we have our glute med and min. So these are the lateral stabilizers and movers of the thigh. And then eventually you're going to go to the front. So there's a bit more of a sense of lying on your front. Not totally, you're not going to be lying face down quite yet. But I'm definitely using my top leg to help push in here. So I'm still around the same area, this hip bone, but a little more on the front. And there's some closer tendons to the surface. It can feel a little more clunky. Nice. And then from there, we're starting to do anterior thigh work, mainly quad, a little bit of hip flexor. So again, I'll just switch sides. So I'm doing something that's vaguely balanced in the body. So the hip bone's on the side. The hip joint is deep. And then what we do is kind of start to trace down the rest of the thigh bone, which is also the hip bone, but we've got this kind of long shaft to explore. So it's anywhere from the front of the hip bone where we're working and then down the thigh. So I'm going to begin by lying on the ball with it just medial to my ASIS, which is that hip points or hip bones, pelvic bones that we often use to sort of orientate the pelvis. So it's going to be just medial to that lying on the front. Again, there's a lot of tendons around here, so just be mindful, and touch toes at the beginning might be useful. And then you'll just keep swaying and moving. And then move yourself further forward so that it starts to feel like the ball is again back in like the fleshy part. And extending through the knee, straightening through the knee, you'll notice that there's a sense of engagement through the quads underneath the ball. And then at a certain point, maybe you relax on down with the upper body and bend the knee. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm getting a real clunk feeling, like I'm clunking on something, clunking off, rolling on and off. that's great. That's like the feeling of sort of one muscle belly into the other. And then you'll just keep positioning the ball wherever feels nice, with bent knee, straight knee, clunky, all the way down to the knee joint. So I often do it in kind of in thirds, so I'm sort of in my final third at the moment. Same thing as when we were on our back, you can really rotate through the thigh. As you rotate the lateral thigh down or onto the ball, you get more into this sheathy stuff. And then as you go internally, rotating the inner thigh down, or it will eventually be up, more on the adductors, the groin muscles, the stuff that brings the leg in. So you might just a little bit push down with the thigh into the floor.